it's much healthier to be able to be moving towards something, something you're excited about, something you feel very positive about.
This is the How to Quit Working Show. Jeff Steinman believes entrepreneurship is the only true path to freedom. That's why he created the How to Quit Working Show, where you'll hear stories, insights, and inspiration from lifestyle fanatics who left their soul-sucking 9-to-5 job forever. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and ultimate lifestyle fanatic, Jeff Steinman.
Hello and welcome to the How to Quit Working Show. Today we're going to talk about a topic that might not seem like it has anything to do with starting a business, but it actually does. It has a lot to do with starting a business. We're going to talk with Beth Buelow, and Beth is kind of an expert on starting a business as an introvert. We've all heard kind of the Myers-Briggs, maybe the INTJ or EXBT or whatever those letters are that come out of that Myers-Briggs assessment that you've probably taken at some point, maybe in your corporate career or at some other point. But how does that affect how you actually go about starting and running a business? And Beth is an expert on that. She's going to talk about some tips for using your introverted or extroverted tendencies as an advantage in dealing with those in your business, as well as kind of her journey as to how that she left her job and began doing this awesome thing, helping introverts start businesses. Now, about half of the folks listening to this statistically are probably introverts. And I think that if you're in that group, you're going to want to listen to this show and you're going to want to take Beth's advice. And if you're the other half, if you're an extrovert like me, then you're going to want to listen to this because what it's going to do is it's going to give you some really great ideas and guidelines on how to deal with introverts in your life and in your business. So again, it's not just about in your business, it's about in your life, because really dealing with people in life and dealing with people in business isn't really any different. It's all the same thing. And when you kind of understand this framework and this way of understanding what an introvert really is and what an extrovert really is, it will be really helpful to you in all kinds of different aspects of your life. So enjoy this interview with Beth Buelow. Now, before we jump into that, though, I want to invite you over to the How to Quit Working Circle on Facebook. This is where we keep talking after the show. This is where we have the deep conversations. This is where you can go to get your questions answered, get feedback on stuff. There's a great, vibrant community there. The community is only a couple of months old. I think I maybe started it two and a half months ago. And I'm just blown away by how much it's grown, and it's not about the numbers as it is about the value and the participation. Seeing folks that are out there implementing the ideas that they hear about on the show, and what they're saying is, okay, this is working, but I've got some questions, or I'd like some feedback on this, or I'm not sure where to go from here. Well, they're jumping out there, posting in the circle on Facebook, and they're getting great feedback, and it's helping them to get to the next level in their business. And I'm so excited about everything that's happening out there. So go over to howtoquitworking.com/group, and you'll be shot over to Facebook, and you can just click on Join Group there, and we'll approve your request very, very quickly. So without any further ado, let's talk to Beth Buelow of the Introvert Entrepreneur. Beth, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you here. Now, you've got a neat journey, and you've do something really kind of unique for entrepreneurs. Tell us about this whole introvert thing, and what does that have to do with being an entrepreneur?
Well, the introvert thing, first, let me address that for a second. The introvert thing, yes. It has become quite the topic of conversation over the years. It's been, the concept has been around since the 1920s. And I would say between 1920 and probably sometime in the 80s, it wasn't, it probably wasn't talked about much beyond the psychology circles. And it started to enter the mainstream with Myers-Briggs. Like, have you taken a Myers-Briggs assessment before?
I certainly have.
Yourself? Yeah, most people have, especially if they've been in a corporate environment or they might have taken it in school. So that is part of what started to bring it to the mainstream. And it's been maybe in the past, 30 years that it's been talked about. People have almost understood what introvert extrovert means, but not quite as well as we do now. And so that's one of the things I'm passionate about and one of the reasons I was drawn to the introvert angle is because it is something that has been really misunderstood over all these years, coming up on almost 100 years of having it in our vocabulary. People thought that it would be, an introvert was someone who was shy or a loner or, didn't like people, antisocial. You can go on and on with all of the stereotypes. And I will say, even this sounds a little sinister, but when I first started working with introverts, I set up a Google alert on my account for the word introvert because I wanted to see how was it showing up in the media. And this was back in 2010, and it was almost always showing up in relation to a crime. So people were saying, this person was a loner, he kept to himself, I think he was an introvert.
Wow.
And so there were very negative connotations, and it was not something to be proud of. And I would say in the past, 5 or 6 years, that's really started to shift. And I've seen since 2010 that Google alert has really significantly moved towards introverts and networking, introverts as leaders, introverts as public speakers. It's much more positive. And I like to think that, perhaps my work is starting to contribute to that just in the conversation. But there have been a number of books published that focus on introversion that have really shined the light on what the strengths are. For instance, Quiet by Susan Cain and Self-Promotion for Introverts by Nancy Ankowitz and Introvert Power by Laurie Helgo. So there are, increasing resources that are saying, yeah, being an introvert is okay, And for me personally, I discovered I was an introvert back when I was in graduate school. I think I always knew that I was more of a solitary, I enjoyed my solitude. I enjoyed my quiet. But I didn't know, I was equating it more with like lacking social skills.
Wow.
Yeah, which I think is what a lot of introverts tend to do. But anyway, so I've always had an interest in that. And when I turned to become a coach, I was searching high and low, as probably many entrepreneurs, especially service-based. Unless there's something really obvious when you get started, you really, it might be a struggle to find your niche, right? Your target market and who you're meant to serve. And it took me a couple years, to figure that out. And I think it's because I was realizing that I was attracting introverts, but I didn't see it as a market. Until I was sitting in a workshop, and the facilitator, her name was Julie, and she was talking about identifying your target market, and she said, well, there are demographics, of course, but there are psychographics that you can also take into consideration. And I truly had one of those, ding, 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 light bulb moments of, oh, wait a minute, introverts. That's who I'm attracting. I'm an introvert. I love the topic. I love talking about personality types. It brings together, so many things. And it's an underserved population,
Sure.
and misunderstood. So contrary to what my normal MO is, I did no research. In that workshop, I just said, I coach introverts. And then that evolved to the introvert entrepreneur, realizing that, number one, that described me,
Sure.
and it gave me a certain amount of freedom. But it also, I found that that's who I really did want to serve, because it sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Introvert.
It does.
Entrepreneur.
It does. And I want to start by asking you, because I think that 50% of the audience out there is probably an introvert.
Right.
So if you're sitting there listening, you have a 50-50 shot of answering yes to, what is the question, Beth, that someone could ask? How does somebody know if they're an introvert?
Yeah, it has to do with energy. And so you gain energy in quiet and in solitude, in lower stimulation environments, and you drain energy in social interaction. So you can do the party, do the networking, do the client work, all of that, but it requires a huge projection of energy. And in order to replenish that energy, you need to retreat. So you can just ask yourself, how do I prefer to recharge my batteries? Do I do it by myself, in quieter alone time, or do I recharge and get energized by hanging out with people and having social interaction?
Excellent. So that's a pretty easy way to answer that question. And I gotta say, Beth, this is Interesting, because I'm getting ready to turn 40 here shortly. I went through most of my life until probably about 2 or 3 years ago thinking that I was an introvert. Until someone posed that question to me. And I said, no, that's not how it works. I actually get drained when I'm by myself.
Right.
And I get charged up when I'm around other people. So it really shifted the way that I looked at my life and the way that I designed my business, because I have to design it in such a way that I get that energy and that stuff that I need from other people.
Absolutely. Yes.
Do you think most folks really have an accurate assessment of whether they're an introvert or extrovert?
I think they have an inkling, and sometimes they don't. I think they have an inkling, but they don't always honor it or pay attention to it, or they think, perhaps that it's not important. And other times I think they truly don't know, because so much of it can feel situational. Like there are times when I gain energy through interaction.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be a complete one-to-one. It's
not a complete one-to-one, exactly. And, for the introvert, I would say it's like it's a bookend. I need an hour of solitude for every hour of interaction plus an hour of downtime afterwards. So, it's like 2 to 1 in terms of that. But, we all have elements of each, so I've had to learn to cultivate some extroverted traits in order to promote my business, in order to show up, in order to have conversations like this.
Yeah.
So I look at it as the healthiest thing is to have some sort of balance. So to be aware of what your natural preference is, but then that tells you what perhaps not necessarily opposite, but what complementary skills and behaviors or habits that you want to cultivate that are going to give you that healthy yin-yang balance to things.
I'm glad that you went to the place of talking about promoting your business, because one of the things that we talk about a lot on the show is that, having a business is so much about promotion, so much about being out there in front of people. How does somebody who is an introvert and who's being drained by that process of getting out and talking to people and promoting their business like you're doing right now, how does somebody who's an introvert get all that done when it seems like it's kind of sucking the energy out of them?
Right. Well, I think the first and most important thing is that you recognize that it does suck your energy, and that it does so not necessarily, you have to kind of examine what about it does. And sometimes it's because you just flat out don't like it. You're just not enjoying it, or it's not your bailiwick. Other times or it could just be a story, like I'm not good at this, and so therefore it drains my energy. You see, because we make up stories.
Yeah, we sure do. Boy, we sure do.
We're great storytellers.
I made up a story for 37 years that I was an introvert.
Exactly. And that can be exhausting, because then you sort of have to sustain that story.
Yeah.
And so it becomes self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think first is just to recognize, okay, I'm an introvert, and that means that when I'm having social interactions, and that includes promoting my business, it's going to require, instead of saying it drains my energy, just saying it's going to require a lot of my energy. And so how can I take care of myself first and foremost, so that I have the energy to go to that and give it my, show up as my best. And that means, being proactive about it. And it might mean saying no to some things. Like I just came back from, being out of town, and I did 2 presentations, one each morning. Okay, so Tuesday and Wednesday morning. Okay. And I didn't do anything else the rest of the day. And I'm really glad I didn't. It's like I feel like, maybe I should have reached out and had a meetup with people on my Facebook group, or, done this or that or whatever. But I just knew I had a concentrated period of time in which I needed to project my energy to get my message out, and then to take care of myself, I just need to say no to everything else and not overdo it. So I think that's part of it, is just knowing yourself well enough and being willing to honor what that is without guilt. Like somebody else might look at it and say, boy, you really missed some opportunities there. You could have driven up to Portland and met with so-and-so. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, I could have. And I knew that would compromise how I was showing up for where I was getting paid to show up, So being aware and making choices that are, very intentional, and again, not feeling guilty about it, just being very, very intentional. And then secondly, to know what kinds of events and what kinds of promotional activities you want to do. You don't have to chase all the bright, shiny objects.
Really?
You don't
Can you say that again?
You do not have to chase the bright, shiny objects. And, and over the past 5 years since I've been doing this, it's like every day there's a new bright, shiny object. Yeah. And every time you go to an event, somebody is telling you about that new bright, shiny object and saying, if you're not here, you don't exist, or you have to be doing this, or else you're missing so many leads. And it can become extraordinarily overwhelming. So, some of that overwhelm and some of that dread that I think introverts feel around self-promotion is that pressure that comes from the outside. It's almost, it's manufactured because we absorb all of these shoulds that everyone is thrusting upon us. And, it requires, I think, some self-awareness and some contemplation about, where is my audience hanging out? How do I most want to connect with them? What's going to be, and this is an overused word, so forgive me, but what's going to be most authentic in terms of, my energy, the kinds of conversations I want to be having, the things I want to learn, and how I want to connect, and not be distracted by all of those shoulds. To really figure out where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? And you could say that's true of every entrepreneur, but I think that it's especially true for the introvert who wants to be sure they're preserving their energy, building something sustainable, and having fun doing it instead of, dreading the different activities. And I'll just say one more thing. I know for an introvert, I can talk, can't I?
You're fine.
And when you're talking about that self-promotion, this again, it goes to how you're showing up online, but also in person, like, networking and being out, being seen is such an important part of promoting your business. Just showing up, whether or not you're, hawking your wares or whatever. For the introvert to really understand and honor the types of events that are the least draining and potentially energizing. So sure. I do not do the happy hour networking. It's too unstructured. It's too noisy. There are too many distractions. It's, it's too much.
Yeah.
So I just know.
It's too much for a lot of us.
It's too much for a lot. Okay, thank you. So let's just do away with it. Can we just get rid of those?
I would love it.
Permanently?
I would love it. I think it was January of 2013 I did the last one, and I said, I'm done. Wow. I am done.
Awesome. Kudos. I find that if you open up your definition of networking, going to a book signing can be networking, going to a reading, going to, obviously conferences and things like that. I think those are great opportunities for networking for introverts because there's a structure and there's usually a focal point, like a speaker or a topic or something. And it makes connecting, and usually you're perhaps with other people that are, if not your peers in the industry, are at least all sharing some sort of common interest. And it makes conversation, a lot easier to jump in. Whereas at the happy hour, it seems random. So, to take advantage of industry specific or audience specific types of events, as well as just to look at, the casual everyday as an opportunity to make a good connection.
Awesome. I love how you made the point that marketing and networking might require more of your energy. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as though you were saying you have to kind of budget for it. It's almost like taking a big vacation, right? If you take a big vacation, that's okay. It's going to require a bunch of money.
Right.
And that also means that you can't spend that money on other things.
Right.
And as long as you understand that and know that, you're cool.
Exactly. It's like we've probably all heard, if you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else.
Yeah.
And if you're aware of that and you do it intentionally, then it's amazing the amount of pressure that relieves. And so if I say yes to the nap, I'm saying no to being on the webinar. Mm-hmm. If I'm okay with that, then that's my business and that's okay. And if that's part of what I need to keep myself going and be able to show up for something else, then so be it. That's part of just accepting your style and working with it and ultimately that's going to help you build a business that's aligned with who you are instead of what you think everybody else thinks it's supposed to be. Like, I'm supposed to be this power worker that gets up at 6 a.m. and works until 10 and never takes a break. And yeah, no, not so much. Because if I did that, I wouldn't last very long.
What a great point.
So
yeah, it doesn't have to be what other people think. That's the great thing about being an entrepreneur is you can design it however you want. You can design it to work the way you want it to work. Now, Beth, you haven't always been doing this really cool introvert entrepreneur thing. You used to have a regular job, right?
That's right. That's right. I've had such a range of jobs. Some I loved and some I've hated. And before I left one job that I was okay with, but I knew that it's like I was addicted to a job that I could get, but I wasn't happy doing it, if that makes any sense. Like, I would say, in this case, it was fundraising, doing fundraising for nonprofits. I would say, okay, I know this industry, I can do it, I'm reasonably good at it. And then I would take a job and then I'd get into it and be like, I really don't like this. This just doesn't fit me. This exhausts me. Fundraising and an introvert. But then I would continue to find myself drawn to those jobs because I suppose, it kept giving me that feeling of success. Like, I'm employable and people want me.
Validation, all that kind of stuff.
Validation.
I think that's why I stayed in corporate as long as I did. Mm-hmm. Gave me some degree of validation. Exactly.
Because the validation doesn't come as readily and easily when you're an entrepreneur, at least when you're a solopreneur.
Wow, that's for sure.
It's really got to come from inside. Yeah. So it's so much easier to just keep on that external validation cycle. So finally I did break that cycle and I started my own business, and it was a freelance writing business. So I was doing grant writing and article writing and prospect research, and so tapping into some of what I had done before, but really playing more to my strengths of writing. And I did that for about 7 months, and then my husband had a job opportunity, and then I got a job in a new community, and so we moved, and it was actually one of my dream jobs that started out, it stayed that way for a little while and then it declined, and as sometimes those kinds of jobs tend to do. Yeah. And managed to segue into another job that truly was a dream job that I think set me up very well for what I'm doing right now, and was actually, in reality, very hard to leave. And again, I left that one because we decided to move across the country to the West Coast. We were in the Midwest. And so when I got here, I thought, okay, I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit, but I feel like I just had this great employment experience and I see opportunities to build on it. So why don't I just go that route? And started to do that, took a part-time job at a place that I was hoping I would become full-time. Not a good fit. Not a good cultural fit, not good personality fit. And I feel extremely fortunate that serendipity crossed my paths with some coaches that kind of introduced me to this world that I had always been curious about and knew about, but had that, and maybe a lot of entrepreneurs do that, like they'll see somebody else making money a certain way and they'll say, oh, they can do that, but that would be too good to be true.
Sure,
or, can you really make money doing that? Can you really make a living?
Yeah.
And they showed me that you could. So that's when I just kind of jumped in with both feet and said, oh, I'm not going to go do the traditional thing. I'm going to do my thing. And never looked back. So it was a good move, yeah.
Excellent. Well, what would you tell, Beth, somebody out there who's maybe in a corporate career kind of similar to you? Maybe they're working their dream job. We hear that a lot. Like, I had my dream job, then it turned out to be not such a dream.
Right, yeah.
Well, what would you tell somebody who's out there working in corporate and they're thinking about maybe jumping out and doing their own thing, introvert or extrovert? What kind of advice would you have for them?
I think the most important thing is to just thinking about how to phrase this, that to make sure that you're moving towards something as opposed to running away from something. So don't quit the corporate job because you hate working in the corporate environment and you just want to get away from it and anything would be better than that. You just want to do your own thing. That's more negative motivation. And I can't say that is not allowed to be part of it, because certainly it's natural, because otherwise, if you weren't dissatisfied, you wouldn't be thinking about something else, perhaps. But if that's the sole motivation, then that's kind of setting yourself up for a little bit of trouble, because there's that saying, wherever you go, there you are. And we have a tendency to replicate patterns, whether it's, the people we bring into our lives or our habits or the choices we make. And if you're running away from something, chances are you're going to find a way to replicate it in whatever you create. It's much healthier to be able to be moving towards something, something you're excited about, something you feel very positive about. And I think it's important, and I feel this way, as an entrepreneur, I will never say I will never go back to working a traditional job again.
You will never say that you will never go back.
Right. Okay. I will not say that, because you just don't know what's going to happen in life. And I don't want to, it's like, I don't want to demonize the corporate or the nonprofit or, the traditional work world. That's not why I'm in business for myself. It's not because they're evil and this is where the sunshine is. It's more about, where do I feel like my talents, where my gifts, where my energy is best going to be used. And right now it's doing what I'm doing, and I love it. And yeah, I can imagine doing it for the rest of my life, but I just don't know what life is going to hand me. Right. You don't know. Absolutely. A move, a death, who knows what can happen in your life that could cause your circumstances to need to change. So I think it's important as an entrepreneur to have an open mind about that sort of thing, because it at least for me, it opens up and it releases pressure, because otherwise, if I were to decide tomorrow I'm going to, tuck it all and go back to a job, probably the first thing I'm going to think is I failed. And I would hate to think of it as a failure. And I think lots of entrepreneurs think, well, if I leave my business and go back to corporate life, I failed, or I lost, or, that was a waste, or whatever. It's like, no, it's, it depends on how you look at it. And I really would not want to have that feeling of, I went back because I failed at it. I would want it to be, I went back because I felt like there was an opportunity that was aligned with my energy and my gifts. And it's where I can show up best and do the most good in the world and feel good about it. So to me, that's more important than, whether you're working in the traditional or working in the entrepreneur. It's saying, where can my gifts best be used? So I guess you ask what advice, and so I guess that, to not be running away from something, but to be moving towards something. And then when you move towards something, to be open to what possibilities might exist within that, and to know that it might show up differently than what you expect.
Such great advice. Do things for the right reason and be open to what possibilities might come up. Beth, where can we get more information about you and the Introvert Entrepreneur?
You can visit my website, which is theintrovertentrepreneur.com. And I have a blog and a podcast and a book. And I've got a book coming out next year in November called The Introvert Entrepreneur. So please stay tuned for that. And that's the best way. And we've got a pretty active Facebook community if you go to facebook.com/theintrovertentrepreneur.
Excellent. Well, we will link all that up below. Beth, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your journey and your advice for introverts. And this is good stuff for extroverts, too, because no matter who we are, half of the people we deal with are going to be introverts as well.
Right. Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks so much. Go check out Beth at theintrovertentrepreneur.com or join her Facebook community at facebook.com/theintrovertentrepreneur. I think a lot of folks don't start businesses because they have this whole thing like, I don't want to go out and talk about myself. I don't want to go out and promote. I don't want to do that. And I think that maybe really understanding the kind of what's going on there. Is it really because you have because you're an introvert and you need to embrace some of the ideas that Beth has talked about? Maybe it's just some shyness and you're actually not an introvert. Either way, it's things that you got to understand, you got to get past in order to successfully start a business. So go look at the resources on theintrovertentrepreneur.com and see if there might be something out there that will help you. I think it's really important when you really understand that half the people that you're going to be dealing with in your life, no matter what you're doing, are going to be introverts. It's a really good thing to understand, and also to understand about extroverts as well, because, we have feelings too, and we have needs as well, and there's a 50-50 shot that you are an extrovert as well. So go over to theintrovertentrepreneur.com, check out the great resources by Beth, and come join us over on Facebook, howtoquitworking.com/group. Join us on Facebook, just click join group and jump into the conversation about how to quit working on Facebook, and I will talk to you next time, and we'll talk to another amazing entrepreneur just like you.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.